Hello and welcome to DVR Internet Setup video by Security Guide. Today I will be explaining setting up a CCTV DVR and router for accessing from anywhere in the world by computer and mobile phones. First I will explain few things to give you a better understanding of some of the technical words. Okay. IP stands for Internet Protocol and is made of four parts, divided by dots and made of digits only. Simply, it is used for addressing connected devices. In the next diagram, it shows how normally your devices are connected to the internet. For example, when you are online on your laptop, it is connected to your router, and router is connected to your ISP, which stands for Internet Service Provider. There are some well-known service providers such as BT, Virgin Media, TalkTalk, and so on. And for example, here we are using BT because one of the most known ones. And then your Internet Service Provider actually links to the outside world or World Wide Web. When you are connected to the internet, your ISP dedicates a unique IP to your router, and this IP, while it is live, is only belong to you and is not conflicting with anyone else's IP in the globe. When you are trying to open a page, basically you're sending a request from your computer and through your router from this IP address, and then the result of it comes back again to this IP address. It's very similar to a postal address, which is only unique to yourself, and anyone want to send a letter, you got to send it using the house number and the postcode and a country name, so it basically will come to you instead of going to any other addresses. So it's important to understand what is IP made for, simply to address your router. Router is a device in your household that normally stands between the devices at your home and your ISP or outside internet. The router's job, first of all, is to distribute the internet facility to few devices. You can connect your TV, laptop, phone, CCTV system, playing consoles and so on to your router and use the internet service. You can connect either by wire or wirelessly through Wi-Fi. But again, router has got its own gateway number. This is a number that is very similar to IP. It's actually an IP address made of 4 parts and digits, and it's got a range. Normally this number starts with 192.168. So from the point of your router to the devices connected to it, you will see that the IP address changes. That IP address of, for example, 81.145.123.1 is not valid anymore, and the router stands there between World Wide Web and devices at home and translates and stands there like a firewall, like a security guard, to make sure that the access to the devices are being controlled. So someone cannot accidentally type your IP and access your computer and access your files and information in your computers and systems. So the router doing few jobs there. The first job is to distribute the internet, distribute the facility, and it's got its own dedicated firmware inside the router. Many people might not notice it, that the router has actually got its own software and firmware built in. But there is a software that I will explain to you in the later stages. So now we're going to the next clip, image, and I can show you how the router distributes the IP addresses. If you look at the numbers appearing for all of the devices connected to the router, you can see that this number, at least the first three parts of it, is exactly the same as the gateway number, which starts with 192.168.1. This is because the firmware within the router decides to dedicate different numbers to different devices in order to locate them and communicate with them. So in this bit, it's like a small miniature of a World Wide Web, that within your household, your router decides to dedicate different codes and IP to the devices to communicate with them. Based on the firmware of the router, this gateway number can be different, but most of the time it starts with 192.168. The third part can be varied, we will explain that later on, and again the fourth part of it, the last part of it. So what router does, reserves a gateway number for itself, and then within that range, up to about 255 different devices, it tries to dedicate the different IP to other devices, and it will be in the same format of the three first part of the router IP address. So again, as explained, you can see that the IP addresses of the devices are on the first three parts are matching your gateway number, which you can see here with the green underline. This part from your router to the devices is known as LAN, or local area network. It's your local network, this part is, and it depends of the way that your router works, and how it basically distributes the IP numbers to the different devices. The outside world in this part is known as WAN, or wide area network. Why it is important that we know the difference between these two areas? Simply because the IP addresses valid between these two areas are different, and because we are explaining the IP addresses here, we need to know what is different between these and how does it affect when we setting up the internet. In here we're showing the local IPs. These IPs are not known outside world, so basically it's only within your local area network these IPs are valid. Maybe the other houses, maybe your neighbor has got the same numbers within their local area network, but this IP address here is only unique to you and no one else has got it. These two in one thing can be similar, and this is that both of them can be either static or dynamic. A dynamic IP it means, if you have a dynamic IP, it means that this IP address might change, depends on your internet provider or the length of the time that you are online or your router is connected to the internet. That IP can be valid. It depends, absolutely depends on your ISP. It can be valid for hours, it can be valid for days or for weeks, or maybe it don't change for a year. But what is for sure there, that is not guaranteed to be a static, and it can change. So we will explain later on if this IP changes, how it will affect your setup and access to your LAN, to your devices at home. Again, internal IP or local IP can be either set on static or dynamic. But in there, you would be able to decide if you want an item to have a static IP or stay dynamic. That depends on your router and that device, how to reserve that IP, and do nothing again with the outside IP address. If you want to set up the static IP in your local area network or LAN, we will show you how you can do that and how you can reserve a static IP. But external or global IP is in hand of your internet service provider. You have to ask them to set your IP to a static or dynamic. Some ISPs provide that service. They might charge a little bit extra to set your IP address to static, or they might totally not give that service to you. So this is again difference between static and dynamic IP. That static IP stays as it is, and dynamic IP might change and will change. Okay, what we're trying to do here now is to access the firmware of the router by typing the gateway number on Internet Explorer. So get rid of any type of like www or HTTP on the address bar, and replace it with your gateway number. This number is again depending on the brand of your router. For example, on BT or O2 or service provider default hubs, normally is 192.168.1.254, but it can be different. For example, on some of the other brand routers such as TP-Link or Netgear or Edimax or other routers, it can be different. You can see the list here that on some of the routers it is 192.168.1.1. in some other ones are .2.1, and some of the other ones end with .0.1. The way to find out what your gateway number is, the best thing is first of all to look at your actual router and look at the sticker on it, underneath of it, or the box of the router, to find out what's the gateway number. If it's not showing there, you can Google it. You can type the model number and brand of your router, and there are should be plenty information, especially of the about the common routers. Just follow the text by gateway number, and it will probably, some websites will show you, or the user manual of the router. So it's not hard thing to find out what is your gateway number. If you just type it there, then you will be prompted to the login page of your router. I'm showing here that this got to be done from one of the computers or laptops connected directly to the same router in the LAN. It can't be from any router in the world, because that IP address, that gateway simply doesn't exist for that particular router. So you got to make sure the laptop is connected to the same router, either wirelessly or by LAN cable, and then you can try that gateway number. In some of the routers, you are still even limited to access the router, and you require to be connected by the cable, not even wireless. But that's only a few type of routers are like that. Once you type the gateway number correctly and hit enter button, return button, then you should see a login page like this. In this particular one, the IP gateway is being 192.168.2.1, similar to Edimax router. This IP address, this username and password that you need to type here belong to the firmware of your router. It is not the wireless password, and is not your account with your ISP. Purely is to access your router. Normally ISPs don't provide this because they think that the users, just the end users, normally wouldn't need this information to log into the router. Again, if you Google search your type of your router, you might find the default username and password for that, or some of the ISPs, they change this information. Once you type the correct username and password, the next page you will see would be the home page of your hub or router. For example, this one is BT. This one here, the first page of Netgear router, Belkin, and TP-Link. So the first page you will see is home page or quick setup of the of your router. All right, in here I just tried to Google some of the gateway number and username and password for some common brands. These are all applies to most of that brand's routers, not to all of them, so it can be vary from router to router. You can see here that Edimax is one of the common routers. Gateway normally is ending by .2.1 and username admin password 1234. Netgear, D-Link are quite popular routers as well, but their gateway ending .0.1. Therefore, all of the distributed IPs to the devices at home gonna be under 192.168.0 and .234 and so on. D-Link, Linksys. Some of the hubs of the service, the default hubs that service providers send into you, such as BT Hub or O2 Hub, they might want, when you type the gateway number, they might not ask you to type your username and password, and directly take you to the router's firmware. But then if you want to make any changes, like if you want to open any port, it will ask you for a password. Normally you wouldn't know the password because they don't provide it the first day. And the best thing is it will alternatively it will ask you to type the wireless number in order to make sure you are the authorized person, and then you can set up a new password for your router. Then you can use that password to make the changes, and set up some hint word if you forget the password. So again, if you are not sure, best thing is to refer to the manufacturer's website of the brand of the router and then find out what is the gateway number, username and password. Alright, what you need to do now is to connect your DVR to your router using a straight Cat5 cable. It can be any length up to 100 meters. You can use any of the free ports of your router or hub, and make sure that the cable is properly connected and the green lights are actually blinking at the back of your router. Alright, in this first example, the DVR is an AVTech 4-channel DVR, and the router is Edimax ADSL router. What I will do is, now the DVR is connected to the router by a Cat5 cable, and we are online, we have internet here, and I will show you how to port forward one port to this DVR. It's actually, this DVR, it just needs one port opening, which is a common port 80 HTTP port. First of all, you log into the DVR. I'm actually I'm on DVR right now, trying to log into the software of the DVR. On AVTech, network menu is under advanced config, and then network here. As you can see here, the default network type is static. This is the factory default. So what we will be doing here, and we can do for almost all of the DVRs, is an interesting trick here. What we will do is change the network type from static to DHCP or dynamic, and then save it, and we need to go out of the menu and go back again. This allows the DVR to take one available IP from the router. So it is the router will be deciding that what IP to dedicate to this new device connected to it. Click back on advanced config, network, and as you can see here, our gateway number is appearing here, which is the IP address of DVR, the router, 192.168.2.1. So basically it is changed of the DVR's default number, and the IP address for this DVR now is .2.84, as you can see here. This makes the job easier because the information will be given to the DVR by router. So now if we make a note of this number here, we're going to use it shortly in one of the computers connected to the same router to log into the router and set up the port forwarding. So we just make a note of this number here. Okay, we are almost done in the DVR part for now. Exit and go to the computer. Okay, now I will be using one computer which is connected to the same router as the DVR, which is Edimax router, to configure the firmware of the router. You need to open a new Internet Explorer or any Explorer. In the address bar, I'm going to type the gateway number of the router, which is on this one, 192.168.2.1. I will be prompted to the login page. Basically, that login page that we just viewed a few seconds ago, that's belong to the router's firmware. It's not your ISP's username and password, neither your wireless. Purely is for your routers. Now, on this router, on the NAT, there is a port forwarding option here. As mentioned, we need to open only one port on AVTech DVR, which is port 80. The item got to be enabled. On command, you can type DVR. Protocol can be TCP. I leave it at both, but normally TCP is for port 80. Local IP address 192.168.2.84. We made a note of this earlier. Local port can be a range, for example from 80 to 100. We need only port 80, so 80 to 80 here, and then the public port again is HTTP port 80 to 80. Once we add it, then the setup is done. Sometimes in Edimax router we need to enable the DMZ as well, using the same IP address as the DVR for some reason. So I'm going to do that as well. Apply changes and press OK. So the port forwarding is done. Simple as that. You can see here that the IP is being added and the port is being opened for that particular IP address, which is IP of our DVR. Now the next step is to find out what my global or public IP is. Simply, I can go to a new web page, Google page, and type show my IP. There are loads of websites that can show what your IP is. Even Google, on top of there, you can see that it's showing what is my current IP. This is what ISP is dedicated to this LAN area. So all of the computers here connected to that router are under the local port, but the router communicates with the outside world, with the internet, under this IP address. As this IP address is dynamic, it can change, and that's where the problem comes from. You will need to contact your internet provider and ask them to switch the IP to static. Then your IP will not change. If you make a note of this IP, and if you are away, you are on holiday and try to access your cameras and your DVR, this number is a number that you need to try. If this changes, that means you won't be able to locate your router and your DVR in order to view the cameras. Therefore, you will need to come back to your LAN, try show my IP from a computer connected to the LAN router to find out what your new IP will be. I mean, this is okay if your IP don't change so often and you don't want to access your DVR, you don't go away for a long term. But if again you go for a long-term holiday and the IP changes too often, that might not be convenient for you. If I keep this DVR connected to the network and you try this IP, you can access this DVR and view my cameras. Obviously I'm not going to keep it connected because I need to try another DVR shortly as well. Again, this would be your public IP. Is important number in order for you to access the DVR. I'm going to show you one old diagram again and explain one important matter to you shortly. In this example, you can see here in this clip that I'm trying to access this DVR from this computer, which is local to me. So in order for me to be able to do so is to type the local IP instead of private IP. If I'm here, not going out of the router, staying within the same LAN and accessing the DVR, I will need to type the local IP. But if I go away from this place go to another city, another house, other place, then I will need to type this IP to access this DVR, because that's the public IP. And with the setting that we already made on that router, port forwarding, I would be able to go through the router and be forwarded straight to the DVR. So this is very important for you to know this. Now if I try this IP address from outside, or local IP address of the DVR from the LAN, what will happen is I will hit the login page of the DVR, which on almost all of the DVR it will ask me for username and password, and some of them to verify a code. So in here I'm gonna type the default username and password and try to log in. As you can see, we are logged in to the DVR and we can see the cameras. This is not the first one I'm accessing this DVR, therefore this page did not ask me to install a one add-on, which is the ActiveX add-on. But you might be prompted, especially if it is the first time you accessing the DVR, you will be prompted to install one file, one add-on to your Internet Explorer or any other explorers. If you remember at the beginning, I tried at the DVR, I changed the IP address to DHCP in order to take the information from router. Now we can change it back to static with the same information being kept under the network menu. How we can do that? In this DVR, if you go to configuration, and if I can find the network, which is here, you can see that the parameters are already here. If I change that DHCP to a static, basically all these go back to what is the default of the DVR. So now what I want to do, stay on DHCP, make a note of these and type them manually. Static IP now, and I'm gonna change this to what the DHCP was showing me. This is the gateway, changing it to what it should be, and then we can save it. In this way, we're establishing a static connection between the router and the DVR. So that part will stay static. It means if you switch off your router or the DVR, disconnect them and connect them back on again, the IP address will be the same. It won't change. So at least we establish a static connection between them two devices. Click save, and it will ask us to type the username and password again. Yeah, you can see that the login is successful. Alright, in this next example, I've connected a Dahua DVR to the same router. This part also applies to the Apollo and Zeus DVRs. This particular DVR will need 3 ports opening instead of only 1. Some DVRs might need even up to 5 or 6 ports opening. So what it does different operations on the different ports. Now, almost with the same procedure, if you go to setting menu and on the network, We can see the network menu here, which showing the default IP address here. The manufacturing companies, they decide to have some like a default IP already written there, and gateway, which is normally based on .1.1 or .1.254. You can see that there are more ports than HTTP port here. Port 37777 on TCP, and on the UDP port 87778. If I take the DHCP option, don't worry that everything turns to 0. I mean, I've connected that DVR already to the router, so I know if I save this and log out of the menu and come back again, the new parameters will apply there. Back to settings, network, and you can see that this DVR already taken some information from the router. The IP address is changed to 192.168.2.85, and gateway is changed to router's IP address or gateway, which is 192.168.2.1. In the later stage, we will change that back to a static and keep the same parameters here as what you can see. So save this and out from the menu, and we need to go to the other computer, to one computer that is connected to this router, and set up our router, that part. Back to Edimax, a new Internet Explorer, and gateway number. Username and password. And we are back on. If we go to port forwarding again, that's the port that we already opened for the previous DVR. What we need to do to delete that, and then start from the scratch again. Protocol, leave it both again, common, DVR. The new IP address for the Dahua DVR is 192.168.2.85, and the local port 80 to 80, and the same for the public port. We add that. Now we need to add another 2 ports here. If we change the protocol to TCP, same local IP, can be the same name, 37777 to 37777. The public port, again the same. We can add that as well. Okay, so you can see here that it's been added in the list of the ports we are opening. Going to UDP, don't forget you can keep it at both. If you are not sure if the port is TCP or UDP, just leave it at both. Three 7778, and the public port is the same. I'm gonna add that one as well. So our 3 ports are open now. Let me activate the DMZ as well. Apply changes. The port forwarding for this DVR is done as well. I guess the IP addresses are still the same. I can't remember the last one, but I think it's still the same. Now this is the IP, our public IP, that got to be used from outside, from anywhere, to access our Dahua DVR. Because I'm accessing locally, I will be using the local IP address. Alright, in the third example, we've connected a Hikvision DVR to the same router. Hikvision DVR has two ports, port 80 and port 8000 by default, both TCP or HTTP and TCP. This also applies to alien DVRs. Alright, first we will need to access the network config on the system configuration. Hikvision has got a interesting menu, network menu, because what it does is actually it shows you a current configuration that the router is dedicated to the DVR, and in here is what you can manually add. So while I'm here, I might keep it as a static and change the IP address matching to these parameters here. 192.168.2.86. That's our IP address of the DVR. Default gateway is our router's IP, which I will change it to 192.168.2.1 and save it. DVR will restart and match these parameters to these ones here. As you can see, setting up internet of the DVR is mainly the configuration from the router side instead of the DVR side. Maybe 10% is on DVR and the rest is on router. It's only if we know how to open ports on the router, then the job is very straightforward and very easy. Just bear in mind that not every router is simple and easy like Edimax. Some of the routers are more complicated. I will be showing a setup on BT Hub shortly. In them you can easily go and just add the ports, the IPs, and open the ports. What you need to do is to make an application and add the ports under that application, then point that application to your DVR IP, DVR's IP or DVR. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's not that hard. It's doing the same thing, just in different way. There are loads of different firmwares and routers in the market, so it is impossible to go through all of them. But if you know the concept that how this is being done and how we just need to open the ports and forward them to point them to the device IP, DVR's IP, then more or less all of the settings are the same. Okay, now back to computer. I will need to open two ports, port 80 and port 8000, in order to set up the internet access to Hikvision DVR, and as I mentioned, applies to alien DVRs as well. We are back in here, port forwarding, and I just deleted the old settings for the Dahua DVR. Local IP address, as we could see on DVR, local port is obviously 80 and 80, and public port 80 and 80. We add that, and then the second port is port 8000 on the TCP. I just leave it at both. Okay, just one thing you need to be careful. In some routers, the firmware using a port 8000 or port 8080 as like a router management port, remote accessing port. If that's the case, and the router using port 8000, that will conflict with your DVR. So I recommend that you go back to the DVR under the network menu and change the port 8000 to 8001 or 8002, something else, but not 8000. In that case, you will avoid any any port conflict. Again, DMZ is required for this router, and we're gonna apply that. All right. Now this is done. We just open 2 ports here, and by typing the global IP, anyone should be able to right now will be able to access this DVR and view the cameras. Now, in a new tab, we're gonna access the DVR. Again, public IP from outside, local IP from this LAN place that I am in. This is the login page of Hikvision DVR. You can see the ActiveX trying to be installed. I'm gonna allow that. Username admin, and the password normally believe is 12345, and obviously port 8000 here. Login, and we are in. You can view the cameras here, or you can have 4 screens here. Okay, so this one is done as well. External IP should just work same as what you can see here. Okay, back to AVTech DVR, which needed only 1 port opening, port 80. But this time we will try to open this port on using BT hub, just a basic BT hub, which BT normally sending to residential customers. Again, for the DVR is going to be the same procedure. What we need to do is to change the network menu, network status to DHCP, network type. Back to DHCP, exit, and we should be able to see the new parameters now for this BT hub. Alright, as you can see here, the gateway is changed simply because BT hubs are using different method of addressing for their gateway as a gateway number and to code all of the devices connected to them. This one is 192.168.1.254. The Edimax one was .2.1, but you can see that every router might be different. Therefore, the IP address dedicated to this DVR, the first 3 parts are matching the gateway number, which is 192.168.1, and then one of the available IPs, something randomly chosen by the router, 64. We make a note of that, and then now we need to go to the computer to do the settings. Okay, in here now we're gonna set up the port forwarding on our new router. Now we are using a new router, which is a BT Hub, not Edimax anymore. Again, Internet Explorer, and typing BT Hub's gateway number, which is different of the original one, 192.168.1.254. As you can see here, the router didn't even ask us for the username and password. It will do when we want to make some changes. Where we need to go is settings, firewall, and then allow applications. BT and O2 hubs are quite similar. I'm gonna choose the IP address of the DVR by manually typing it, which was 192.168.1.64. Choose that, and then we want to allow individual application. Port 80 is the only port we are opening here. Because it's only one port, and it's normally routers have that port described and opened under one application, which normally is either called web server or HTTP. Once that we have chosen the IP address of the DVR, and we're going to allow individual application, instead of making a new application, we're going to find that in the default applications here. If I just scroll it down and go to web server, that application contains port 80 on almost every router. So that makes the job easier. I'm going to just choose that and add it here. You can see that now that the DVR is asking us for password. I believe that BT don't send this password to their customers, so it's obvious that you don't have this password, but you can change that. You can have your own password set up there. I'm gonna click on I forgot the password, and I still can't remember it. That's a Wi-Fi key which I can find on the actual router. If you type that Wi-Fi key and enter a new password, then you can even have a hint. Then you submit it, the changes you made will apply, which was the previous screen. Okay, let's do that and then carry on. Okay, after entering the Wi-Fi key and setting up a new password, you can see that the configuration has been successful, and the hosted application is already added from this left list to the right list. So for our DVR, now the web server application has been added, which under that web server there is a port 80. If we edit that application, we can see port 80 is being opened on that. So we simply just add that web server. If you opening only one port 80 on any DVR and you have this default application of web server or HTTP, then just simply add that to the hosted applications of your DVR's IP. In the next example, I will show you how you can add a new user-defined application, because it will be more than one port that we need to dedicate to the application. So I'm going to connect the Hua DVR and show you how this port forwarding can be done. Now, again, a new Explorer and BT Hub's gateway number 192.168.1.254. Back to the familiar screen. Settings, firewall, and allow applications. Alright. In here, before we do anything, we need to add a new user-defined application, because it's going to be one application with 3 ports, especially for that DVR. It's not going to be within these default applications here. The name we're going to choose later on, it shouldn't be in use. So it's going to be a brand new name and the ports added to that. We click on there and we need to choose a name for it. Let's call it my DVR. The first protocol going to be TCP, port or range 80 to 80, and we leave these blank, and we leave this one as well. Add to list. This is a password that we created earlier. And you can see that this first port with the protocol port type of TCP and port range of 80 to 80 is only one port. It's being added to our My DVR application. The second port gonna be port 37777. 37777. Leave them again blank. Add to list. The second port is successful, and now under the UDP protocol 37778. 37778. To explain again where we got these ports from, this depends on the firmware of the DVR, and normally you can find it in the user manual coming with the DVR. Every DVR might have its own second or third or up to 5th or 6th different ports, which you can choose open them, or in some of them you can change them. One note here, that if the ports are from the same protocol and just one number different, for example, if you need to open port 37777, 37777, 7778, 7779, and 7780, then you can open actually a range of ports. You can open a port from 37777 to 37780 if all of them are on the same protocol. That makes the job easier, but I've done them individually here because the protocols are different. Leaving them blank again, add to list, and that one is successful as well. So our application is created with 3 different ports. We need to go back, choose our DVR's IP. I mean, it might be one of these, but we can choose it because to make sure 100% which one it is, then we type it here manually, 192.168.1.68. First choose it, and then by clicking on that option, you're gonna allow one individual application. Can be more than one, but we need only one at the moment. If you scroll it down, then again you will see my DVR application has been added here. There it is. Add it to the right hand side. And you port forward and it's done. So by doing this, you open all 3 ports in the same time, because them 3 ports are within this application. Let's save it. Okay, it's already been applied, so I don't need to really save that. going here, show IP, show my IP. If you see, after we changed our router, our public IP is changed, because BT is not providing the static IP to us, so they don't guarantee that this IP stays the same. From the last example to the new router, this is changed. Alright, if you try this now, then you would be able to log into the Hua DVR. Because I'm within the same network, as I explained, the IP I need to try is local IP, which is 192.168.1.68. Okay, so that IP from outside, or if you're using a mobile, for example, if you're using, we will explain the mobile phones later. Now everything is done. All you need to do to access this DVR from your mobile phone is simply to download the relevant dedicated application on your phone and type the IP address, port number, and username and password. If your phone is connected to the same Wi-Fi as the DVR, then this will be 192.168.1.68. in this example would be the local IP you need to type. If your phone is connected through the 3G to the internet, that means you are not within the same network with your DVR and computer, then that's the IP that you need to use now. I think this was a very good example, and hopefully it makes it easy and possible for you to set up your own router and DVR. If you understand this bit, then every DVR and every router more or less will be the same. Okay, that was it, and thanks for taking your time to watch this video clip. I hope you found it useful. I will make another 2 videos to explain how to install and use application on your mobile phone and iPad and on computer, and the other one to use the DNS service, DNS service, if you cannot get a static IP from your internet provider. So thanks again, and talk to you soon.